Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. Let me start off by saying I don't hate the F-35. I think it's a very innovative program, and indeed it's pushing a lot of frontiers. But I find the logistics of the F-35 problematic. Now remember, I spent decades organizing logistics, getting stuff from point A to point B, from the biggest crane in the world to, a package of pills. I've moved it all. And this is what bothers me. You see, the war between Russia and Ukraine, Russia is able to basically say, produce anything. And they're getting Su-35s, Su-34s, all this sort of things rolling off their assembly line. The F-35 is not produced in very many plants at all. In World War II, they were so desperate for aircraft, they came up with the Mosquito. And the Mosquito, while an incredibly impressive frame, was made out of wood so that they can even get furniture makers in on assembling airlines. And that's how they were able to overwhelm Germany. They were bombing Germany's production capacity while dragging other sectors into their own. This is distributed manufacturing. And in a way, they've done that, but they did it in the wrong way with the F-35. Different countries have been given different parts of the F-35 to produce, but final assembly still all goes to the Lockheed plants. And like I said, there's not a lot of them. You also don't have any diversity. There's the F-35. While currently the McDonnell plants with the F-15 and F-16 are still open, and you could probably crank those models out by the dozen, there is no other backup. And what we've seen in World War II and in Ukraine, where fighting is at its most desperate, you have to be able to push other things into production as well. Boeing right now is sitting back trying to win the NGAD, Next Generation Air Dominance, but let's be honest, they haven't produced anything since the 1970s, the F-15s and the F-16s. They don't really have a good option. The F-35 is being pushed all over the world. And if we did go to war, there's just not the production capacity to start replacing mass numbers of F-35s. And I'm not saying that F-35s are going to get shot down left, right, and center. No. I'm just saying there's no little brother backup, because the F-15s and the F-16s, and I keep pointing to them, let's put the F-18s in there as well, they're all aging. Most of them are roughly around year 2000 airframes, aside from some that have been purchased for replacement. And unfortunately, there's the strategy of putting this next generation air dominance platform into production, but it takes years to get anything ready. There's an old saying, putting all your eggs in one basket. And that's essentially what they're doing, and that basket is not very deep. Northrop works on the B2. Now you could scale down, so B-21 actually. You could scale down the B1 and B2 to something smaller, but it's not going to be as effective. You need to design high performance aircraft from the ground up. The F-22, very impressive aircraft, hasn't been produced since about 2010. I'm questioning where they get the spare parts for it, because the B-52s recently had new engines go into them. What engines did they choose? Rolls-Royce engines. Now, you can insert a joke here about Rolls-Royce being the best engines in the world, but the same token, it says something that the United States couldn't find an American contractor to produce what are very simple turbofans. Couldn't be done. And it's not only our problem. The Chinese, and this is not a knock on the ingenuity or the intelligence of the Chinese people, they have problem with the high performance jet engines. And that's simply because the metallurgy involved, the setting it up, this ratio to that ratio and everything, the the Russians have it and they're willing to sell it, and the Chinese have done a good job of reverse engineering that and producing their own copies. But making your own, it's very difficult. For a lousy representation, a lot of people would. Okay, look at all those car jockeys, the gearheads, and they know the inside of a Cadillac, left to right, and the screw on the right has got to be precisely here, and if not, you're going to get noises from the engine, this, that, the other thing. They know that Cadillac, but you give them a Mustang, they don't have a clue. Not because they're stupid, no, they're a special kind of smart. But it's just that's what they've specialized into. And China has specialized into this mass production that hasn't quite caught up with the rest of the world. They can still do impressive things. They can do almost anything they want, but they don't have the tolerances. That's the word I'm looking for, to make things on the scale required. I'll give you an example. Excuse me. There's a very big manufacturer in my city, Magna, and they make tons of spare parts. There's probably a Magna part under your hood right now. So they make cars, airplanes, all that sort of thing. They make the spare parts for the stuff that goes in. They approached Honda and Toyota, and even though Magna is a Canadian company that literally their stuff goes into fighter jets, Honda and Toyota said, no, your stuff's not high quality enough for what we're using in our engines. And Canadians aren't stupid. Canadians are pretty ingenious. We just don't produce stuff that's needed in that quality. And it was a humbling moment for them to say that. Because our stuff works fine everywhere else, but you know what? They have their tolerances. The F-35 is probably a high tolerance aircraft. It's top secret. You're never going to see it. But at the same token, they probably have very, very complicated procedures, just like every single other aircraft. Russians don't do that. Now, some people criticize them because their machines are simple. But you know what? I've been in the military. And when you're in the middle of a field and, whether it's cold, where the enemy's raining fire down on you, whatever it might be, you want something simple that you can swap out, put something else in, and get the darn thing going. So that's not a weakness. Yes, they might not perform as well as their Western counterparts, but we have to go out and sweep the debris from the airfields every single day because it gets sucked into a jet intake. We're screwed. They actually have a pulley system where they close the doors, open vents on the top, and they're able to use the air from that to start the jet engines, go down the runway, and not worry about boulders or birds or anything getting sucked into the jet intake. Beautiful piece of technology. I don't know why it hasn't been copied. Because like I said, in field conditions, anybody who's been in the military knows when SHTF, you want whatever you have to work. And that's your only concern. The F-35, they make about 1,000 a year, and right now they're the hot rod on the block. Everybody wants them. China's trying to sell its J-20s, and Russia's trying to sell its Su-57s and Su-75s. Not a lot of takers for them, just like nobody really bought Ladas. I don't know why. The Lada seems like a fun car if you have any technical ability. But again, living in Canada as I do, I understand if it's minus 40 degrees out, you don't necessarily want to go out and mess with the air filter and this and that and the other thing. So, in an actual war, which I hope my theory here never gets tested. In an actual war, could they produce enough F-35s to overcome the losses? Remember, the F-35 is not supposed to be dogfighting. It's supposed to be sneaking behind enemy lines and removing the things you don't want to be there. It can dogfight. It can do almost everything. It is a general purpose platform, and I'm not saying anything ill about it, aside from the fact that it's they're designing their production schedule around having a leisurely 20, 30, 40-year process where, in 40 years they're going to be selling these things to, you know, the Bahamian Air Force and stuff like that because yes, the Bahamas and little places like that do have air forces. They have like 12 aircraft or something, and there's nothing to be shameful. Aircraft are expensive, and fighters, especially if you're nestled in the U.S. defense basket, you pretty much don't need fighter jets. But the reality is, these things are going to suffer attrition. Jets are not very durable, and the F 35 stealth is pretty much the only thing that keeps it as a less inviting target. Infrared doesn't care about radar stealth. Most things don't care about radar stealth. Line of sight, they're not really all that fast. It's not like the old days where a jet would go over at Mach 2 and in a blink it's gone. The F 35 can't do it. So, in a massive conventional attack, which I don't believe is going to happen, this is just, fancy talk and what if kind of deal. Because after everything Russia has lost in Ukraine, they don't have the manpower or resources to invade anybody else. They're going to threaten it. Of course, that's good diplomacy. I'll, if you don't remove this, I'm going to move my troops into this area. That's standard diplomacy. Just a regular tactic. I have no issue with Putin saying stuff like that. It's not nice of him to threaten other people, but it's kind of the position he has to take now. But we still, in the Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic nations, we haven't realized the lessons of the past. You need to distribute your manufacturing so it can't all be blown up by one strike, which has happened many, many times in the past. And secondly, you need to be able to put butts in the seats. So right now, we're in a peaceful situation. We have everything in plenty because, there's F-15s in some air forces that are the A's and B's and C's and D's. These things are from the 70s. And they're maintained and they're looked after and everything. Great, you can't produce those anymore. Nobody's tooled up to make those. They're with the EX, I believe it is. That's what they're producing now. And they're incredibly expensive, although from its track record it's worth it. And there's just not the volume there. Like I said, in World War II, they could take the Mosquito, put furniture makers to cut everything out, send it to another plant, and then they would put the engines and stuff like that on. We do not have that capability today. And it might not be possible, but it's worth looking into for an emergency stopgap, just in case worse comes to worse. Fighter jets are not the be-all, end-all, but you'll find the same in other branches as well. I'm not worried about M1 Abrams because they're moving on to the A3. They already have so many A2s and A1s that they've been producing since the 80s that replacing them, there's so many in stockpile, it would make your head shake. So I'm dealing with fighters as an example because war fighting takes in all fronts. It's just fighter jets are the big sexy things and people gloat over them. So yeah, that's what I'm using as my example. So with that, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, share, because sharing is caring. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Don't forget to hit the notification icon down below so that you can be notified every single time we put out a new episode. and we hope you have a fantastic day.